If you've been thinking about getting serious with your money, like actually serious, now's the time. The Motley Fool is offering new members 50% off their iconic stock recommendation service, Stock Advisor. This is the same service that's crushed the market with recommendations that have returned 1,057% since inception, compared to the S&P 500's 180% over that same period. This isn't guesswork. The Motley Fool has a track record of finding companies before they become household names. So if you want to invest smarter and you like saving money while doing it, go to fool.com/listen to claim your 50% off discount off a 1-year term of Stock Advisor. Again, that's fool.com/listen. Returns of 1,057% are from the Motley Fool's product Stock Advisor and measured against S&P 500 returns of 180% as of July 10th, 2025. Past performance is not an indicator of future results. All investing involves a risk of loss. Individual investment results may vary.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror, we'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies, inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Welcome to the Shabby Detective, yet another Columbo podcast. I'm your host, Mike White, and joining me, of course, is a man about town, the sleuth himself, Mr. Pistachio.
Where did you get those box of cigars? Where did you get those box of cigars?
Of course, we were talking about Short Fuse, the 6th episode of the first season proper of Columbo, aired on January 19th, 1972. 75 minutes, but boy, oh boy, does this move at a very fast clip.
Yeah, it's the penultimate episode of the first season.
Though it was shot last. Apparently this was the last one shot, 6th one shown. Yeah, we're going to get that a lot as we go through these.
Well, you explained on the end of the last episode why this was shot last, because they wanted the whole Peter Falk wanted to direct an episode thing.
It was directed by Edward M. Abrams, who mostly is known as an editor and director, has done a ton of editing work over the years. Story by Lester and Tina Pine. I reckon they are a married couple who's writing together, and with the teleplay by Jackson Gillis. And boy, oh boy, it stars the one and only Roddy McDowall as Junior. Roger Stanford Jr., boy, oh boy, he is the black sheep of the family, only loved by his mother, who's played by Ida Lupino. Definitely not the favorite, not the apple.
Not his mother, his aunt. His aunt, not even his parents.
Right.
His parents died in a freak explosion at the chemical plant.
Wouldn't you know that they happened to die in an explosion? Nothing suspicious about that at all.
Where do you get off, Mike? You mentioned Roddy McDowall before you mentioned the one and only Inspector Luger himself, James Gregory. You had the audacity, sir, to mention Roddy McDowall before our God and Savior, James Gregory. How could you? How could you? He's in this episode a lot more than I was expecting him to be. Holy cow, does this episode take a while to get going in a lot of ways. You mentioned it's 75 minutes, but the actual investigation part takes a while to get to. I think the most of any episode we've even seen at this point. But that's a good thing because you get to see Roddy McDowall and James Gregory face off verbally in his office.
And I was very happy to see the one and only Lawrence Cook in here as Quincy, also known as Murphy in the credits. So maybe he's Quincy Murphy. Lawrence Cook, if you're not familiar with him, he was the star of The Spook Who Sat by the Door, which is one of my favorite films of all time. So highly recommended if you can check that out. Hopefully one of these days it'll get a real proper Blu-ray release.
What's it about? I've never even heard of this movie.
Oh, it's fantastic. It is about one of the first black men who gets into the CIA. So thus the spook part of it. And he just kind of watches and observes, keeps his head down, soaks up all this information. And then, wouldn't you know, while he's working for the CIA, just doing real menial tasks, just kind of, playing it cool, he's actually out teaching the youths of the street how to become guerrilla fighters and take down the man. So
interesting. Not given much to do here.
No.
But to be fair, the person who is given a lot to do does a lot with it. Like you mentioned, one Roddy McDowall.
Well, and did you recognize, I can't remember if he was the principal. No, he wasn't the principal, or the dean, I should say. I think he was one of the put upon professors at the college where the one and only Dexter Riley went to. William Wyndham is in here as Everett Logan.
Yes. Now you see him, now you don't. Again, the main people, Roddy McDowall and James Gregory, I guess Lawrence Cook. I would say more than anything else, it's Ida Lupino and Roddy McDowall, realistically, are the ones who are given a lot to do here. And William Wyndham a little bit, kind of more towards the tail end of the episode.
And Anne Francis just kind of is weaved throughout here, but I don't really get a real bead on her character.
It's never really explained because it takes place off screen. He's also trying to frame the vice president for the murder by taking the cigar box out of his armoire that it's in. But we never see him do that. That's just the cigar box that he has at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, it's very Shakespearean, this episode, to me. This whole thing of Roddy McDowall being the nephew, I should say, of the aunt, Ida Lupino, who runs this chemical plant. She's married to James Gregory, who plays David Buckner, and he wants Junior out of there, wants Roddy McDowall's character to just leave the whole chemical thing because...
For good reason.
Yeah, McDowall is a total up, and there's this whole case against him that Quincy puts together of like, hey, you forged your aunt's name on this check, you bet all this money, you did this, you did that. And he's one of these guys who, when he went to college, he got multiple degrees. He's one of these guys who, yeah, he's super smart, but he probably is also just wanting to stay in school so he doesn't have to face the reality of the world. But he thinks, kind of like Susan Clark last episode, he thinks that he can run this company. He thinks he knows better than everybody else. So he wants to get everybody out of his way. He wants to get James Gregory out of his way. He wants to get William Wyndham out of his way. He wants to put his aunt in his pocket and just be like, all right, I've got all this stuff taken care of. And he's going to use whoever it takes, including Anne Francis, to get everybody out of there and for him to become the big shot at the chemical company.
But what's funny is they don't necessarily paint James Gregory in a very sympathetic light either. Roddy McDowall is almost sympathetic. Like, it verges on it, but they make him kind of such a smarmy dickhead that you cannot really feel sympathy for him because, he's harassing the employees with the silly string and just being, like you said, kind of a spoiled rich kid. And that's normally not a sympathetic position to be taking. But they kind of go for it a little bit because James Gregory's character is not a great person either.
No, though it feels like he's just had enough of this guy. And it's just like, get this mother out of my company.
You never really get the sense of what James Gregory's motivation is outside of I want the company. Because again, he's trying to use Roddy McDowall to persuade the aunt to sell the company. So like I said, it's just kind of this weird, it feels a little, like you said, a little Shakespearean. It feels a lot Shakespearean.
Well, I should say that Roddy McDowall was 44 years old when he was in this episode. He's acting like he's a lot younger, dressing like he's a lot younger. He's got the kind of shaggy haircut, the big flower shirts going on, unbuttoned down to here. He's got the medallion, but it's the science medallion because he's so super smart and he wants to like show off how incredibly smart he is to everybody. He will not let you forget that he's the smartest guy in the room, or at least he thinks he is.
Well, and that's the thing. He is smart. That's the problem. It's just Columbo's smarter. I will say, though, let me just get this out here. This is one of the first episodes, if not the first episode, where I kind of feel like I have a hard time buying how Columbo knew what was going on. For me, that plan is kind of foolproof, what Roddy McDowall does. You know, sending the car over the cliff. They make such a big deal about the car exploding. And, you know, Columbo's like, well, there's had to be something inside the car. And it's like, it almost feels like it's set at a chemical plant because that was the out that they could be like, well, it's a chemical plant, guys. So, like, it makes sense that he makes a bomb, right? That, to me, was just a little strange. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Because the whole episode opens in a dark room. So you've got Roddy McDowall making the bomb in the dark room, which is also showing us that he is a photographer and he's taking pictures throughout this whole episode, which is kind of ironic because Roddy McDowall was a photographer in real life and he would always take photos and home movies, 8mm movies of what he was doing behind the scenes. So there's tons of footage out there, tons of photos that Roddy McDowall took while he was working because the guy, I mean, he was working from the time he was like, 5 years old back in 1933 all the way up until he passed away. So he had a long damn career and taking all of these photos the entire time. I don't know if he was taking them when he was 5, but he started pretty early. So they're using that, and they're also kind of using the photography thing because that's how he ends up blackmailing. He puts together this whole thing of the Anne Francis character. He like transposes her onto a photo with James Gregory, right? And so it looks like they're having an affair, but we never see the photo.
There's a scene where he's like trying to stop them from seeing it, which I guess is him pretending. It's like, no, I don't want you to see this photo of the two of them together. I'm not going to say there's not a lot of hand-holding in this episode. There's not a lot of hand-holding in this episode, which is fine. I don't need everything spoon-fed to me. But there's a little bit of logic leaps here. It's oddly sloppy for a show that is normally this tight. And look, these folks that wrote this episode, Jackson Gillis worked on Suitable for Framing, and that's been it so far. And Suitable for Framing was just okay.
For me, it's one of my favorites, but I can understand where you're coming from.
I honestly think Suitable for Framing is just a better version of this episode. It has a similar kind of conceit at the end, where because you know how this one ends where it's like, Roddy McDowall laughing. Suitable for Framing kind of has that same thing where Ross Martin's like, no, I didn't touch it. Oh, no. It has that same kind of feel at the end. I would actually rather watch Suitable for Framing because it doesn't have those weird moments of Columbo finding things, I guess, off screen. Because that's what it feels like.
There's no second act twist in this one. Even with Suitable for Framing that you're just talking about, he's going to murder the girlfriend / artist. Or in your, Murder by the Book, you're going to murder Miss Lasanka. There's always that second murder, or usually there's a second murder or some sort of twist in there. Suddenly Leslie Nielsen realizes, oh no, actually it was this order, or wow, Susan Clark is really kind of losing it. There's usually that type of thing in there. And this one is just straight ahead. To your point, there's not that kind of twist to be like, oh, hey, now we have this new character who's introduced, even the aunt in Suitable for Framing. We don't get that whole side story twist type of thing. It's just, okay, I'm going to keep going through here, and Junior's going to keep moving these pieces around, but he pretty much had the whole board set up before the episode started, so it's not like he has to suddenly counter and adjust to what Columbo's doing.
which I found a little strange. What is the short fuse in reference to the bomb then? Because a lot of times they're kind of like a double reference, but it's strange for a character who is meant to be as smart as Roger Stanford Jr. is. He does kind of just let the entire plot happen. He doesn't put up much of a fight because I guess he's so confident that he's going to get away with it. Actually, in this episode, the moment Columbo is there, I don't think Columbo realizes that anything's happened.
Well, even when Columbo first sees him and he's going up the stairs and Columbo's like, "Oh, you're here to do this or do that." He's like, "No, I'm here." And he immediately, it's the typical thing. You immediately start lying to Columbo. And you expect that even that first lie is going to end up trapping him. It's that whole like newspaper on the table type of thing. It's like that first lie should then be a series of lies that is just going to keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper until you can't get out of it anymore. And Columbo just is like, okay, well, you said this and you did this and all of those things don't add up. And remember when you said this thing, but we don't really get that.
It's a good part of the show for me. It's a part I enjoy. Seeing Columbo and Roddy McDowall going back and forth would have been interesting. And instead we see it with James Gregory and Roddy McDowall.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of tete-a-tete from Columbo and Roddy McDowall. Yeah, I mean, we get a few like, "Oh boy, you're so smart," like these kind of things, and Columbo, kind of kowtowing to him, but not that witty rapport that we would normally get.
Which is weird given who they have playing the villain of this episode.
Very charismatic guy. Love watching Roddy McDowall on screen. I mean, he was my favorite part of that first Night Gallery, and I don't know if Night Gallery will ever get back to that level of that pilot episode he was in.
Are you saying we're in for a bad time?
I don't know. Possibly we're going to get surprised, but so far, that pilot's kind of the best part of it.
And Roddy McDowall is one of the big reasons why that pilot is so good. That and Richard Kiley in that painting. But I don't know why they didn't just lean on Roddy McDowall in this episode, because they really have done it. That's the entire framework of this show is a character actor going up against Columbo. That's been the entire framework of the show from the get-go. And I don't really think it's going to stray too far from that. Best I can tell, right?
And there's not a lot of Columbo and Ida Lupino, the Doris Buckner character, because you would think even with like Susan Clark's mother, there was that relationship, that whole, pay the cab, carry my bags in, like those kind of things. Even though they own a chemical plant and live in a very ritzy place, it doesn't feel like this is about class either. And Ida Lupino could have been very stuck up, but instead she's one of the more sympathetic people in the episode.
Yeah, it honestly, it feels strange. It feels like it's just missing something.
The one guy who I thought was going to kind of bring a little bit more to the proceedings is the cop that he deals with a lot, Steve Gravers as the sergeant. He's got a great face. I mostly know him from The Car, and he just kind of shows up and helps Columbo out a little bit. And you're like, oh, well, this is kind of a nice relationship. And this whole thing of like, oh, look down here off of this, aero car that they're traveling on. Like, oh, right down here. And, oh, even mountain goats couldn't climb this. And then you get Columbo acting all goofy, like he's afraid of heights. Or later on when he's like, oh, come on over here on this cliff and look down here at this car. And Columbo's like, yep, nope, I'm good. Thank you. That's good stuff.
I love.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's color, right? I mean, that's color. That's color for the Columbo character. That's giving Peter Falk the opportunity to be awesome as an actor, because Peter Falk is amazing in this role. Why there isn't more of that in this episode is strange.
There's a debate about what are the worst Columbos, and some people say that Short Fuse is one of the worst. I don't think it's one of the worst.
For real?
Yeah. I don't think it's.
I try not to look into the community's feelings on things, because especially with something like Kolchak, it could have gotten in the way of our kind of feelings and kind of analysis of the show, especially that reboot show. But I try to stay away from it with stuff like this, but I can't really say I'm too surprised, because I've seen the episode twice now. And I told you before we started recording, I was like, first time I watched it, I felt like I missed something. And you laughed. And now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, watching it a second time, it's like, I still feel like I missed something. Like, I feel like I missed something because they just don't leave much in the episode for Columbo to do.
Yeah, it's very thin, like butter being spread over too much bread.
And then the climax of the episode, it honestly feels like they had the climax written out and they had the device through which the murder is done figured out, and everything in between they were like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, because even the reason why they get back on that tram is so slight. It's like Ida Lupino drops out of this episode, and you would think they would at least show her at the top, and she's probably not even there at the top, but they like get Roddy McDowall there under false pretenses, get a box of cigars that was quote unquote recovered from the accident. Wyndham and Columbo and McDowell all get locked in this, little tram, and off they go into this. And so it puts them in this almost like Agatha Christie type of drawing room scenario where Columbo starts to lay out the entire case, and Wyndham's just there like listening to it and adding a little bit of color commentary. And meanwhile, I do like Roddy McDowall just freaking the fuck out, looking at his watch, looking at those cigars, thinking that there's a bomb in there, and just being completely fooled, which I always enjoy when Columbo does that. But yeah, to your point, it's like, I like the ending, but all the motivation to get to that ending really doesn't work for me. It's not like suitable for framing where I think that the end matches the means to get there.
You're 100% right. The climax is a lot of fun. It is a perfect conclusion to the story that this episode is attempting to tell. But when you actually see the finale of this episode in execution, it does come up short only because they never make it seem like Roddy McDowall is actually in any amount of danger from Columbo catching him. Columbo just seems like he is just bumbling along in this episode. And it's weird because, again, up until this point, Columbo has been always one step ahead of everybody. But in this one, it's like, so he just got a box of cigars. That was all it took? Did he even admit it?
Not really.
Why would he admit it? They have no way to prove he did it, right? Like, this is the first time where I genuinely don't understand the climax, because past the climax, Roddy McDowall doesn't have to admit he did anything. How would he prove it? How could that's what I was saying. Like, how could Columbo prove this happened the way it did? In a lot of these other things, it's like, oh, your fingerprints were there, or we caught you, or you admitted it, and so Roddy McDowall just like loses his mind at the end.
Had there been like, oh, this guy got a special shipment of cigars and only these cigars were in play, and somehow they moved from his office into James Gregory's car, and we found one of the tubes, and it was this very specific tube that is related to these cigars, and there's no way, and then, it looks like they start pointing the finger at Wyndham like, oh, no, it was from his office. Somehow he must have been involved. And he's like, listen, I'm not a chemical engineer at all. I just work here. I used to be an accountant or something like that. I'm writing a better episode right now than what I think we had, which just doesn't tie the pieces together.
And honestly, the more I sit here and think about it and kind of parsing out the episode in my head, this comes back to the fact that it takes like 20 minutes to get to the part where Columbo shows up. That is the problem with this episode, which is a shame, because that kind of ends up being the best part of this episode, is the back and forth, that initial back and forth with Roddy McDowall and James Gregory. And mind you, Roddy McDowall and James Gregory are guests on this show. They're not the lead on this show like Peter Falk is. He's not given much to do in this episode. I don't know what the next one is that we're going to run into that's a quote bad one, unquote, by the community. I can see why the community feels that this is not a great episode just based on the last 7, or I guess technically 8 episodes of this show that I've seen now. This is the worst episode of this season. That's for sure. And unless Blueprint for Murder is worse, which you haven't said it is. Nobody, I would have assumed if the internet had said that, you would have mentioned it already by mentioning it before. This is a pretty pretty lackluster episode of a show that up until this point has been operating in its first season rather well for a show just in its first season.
Columbo, I don't think he's got very many, if any, stories. I don't think there's any real talk of Mrs. Columbo or...
There's one.
Is there? What's her deal here?
They say the chief said he was going to send his best person.
Right. Oh,
and so they sent you. And then Roddy McDowall says, is that the case? And Columbo says, my wife thinks I'm second best, but there's 80 guys tied for first.
Which made me laugh.
Yeah, it's a funny line.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite bit of it. But I don't think she comes back as far as, anecdotes or anything.
No, it's a very strange Columbo performance because, like I said, it just seems like he's kind of bumbling around. He's just bumbling around. Oh, he's scared of heights all of a sudden. It's like, well, who is this serving? And yeah, I would have had more of a pinning it on someone else. I would have shown more of that as opposed to just like having it happen off screen and us just being like, oh, okay, so you're trying to pin it all on William Wyndham. Got it.
Well, even the whole thing of so many of these Columbo episodes, and we're going to get these more as we go along, it hinges on a technological thing. So in this one, even them having the recording of the conversation, I thought that was kind of cool. But why don't we hear like a noise of the trigger being set? Or why don't we read more or learn more about the particular timing device? And then Columbo is like, oh yeah, he set something to go off at a particular time just to show Roddy McDowall, listen, I know how to do this too. I have figured it out and figured you out. But there's not that cat and mouse as far as wouldn't that require, nitroglycerin or isn't that formula very similar to this? And there's none of that machinations inside of Columbo's head, which is always the most fascinating part, especially when he comes in and either already knows something and just pretends to not know it, or gets a lesson and is able to boom, piece everything together and be like, oh, so you're saying that if I did this and this other person did this thing, then it would do, this the fourth thing over here. And that's how he figures out the case. We never get that kind of aha moment with this.
Which is strange because, again, that in my mind, as the not seasoned Columbo viewer that you are, not the person who enjoys it as much as you have, but I'm enjoying it as we're going along, obviously. The things that I consider to be the parts of a Columbo episode, that thing you're talking about, that moment where, that's the best versions of these episodes, are the ones where you can see Columbo's internal dialogue going in his head in the scenes where he's verbalizing other dialogue. You can see it.
That whole thing that he does where he just puts his finger in front of his nose. And Exactly.
And you know what he's doing. There's none of that in this episode. This is a completely different character. You know what this feels like? In a lot of ways, it feels like an episode of Murder, She Wrote. Because, Columbo does outsmart Roddy McDowall at the end, but it wasn't such a, it was such a logic leap that I don't even think Columbo is that smart as a character, because whatever character could have figured that out is essentially omniscient. And Columbo's not omniscient. And when you start writing your characters that way in a murder mystery show, you start running into problems where all of a sudden there are no stakes. And it's weird. It's just he just knows things in this episode, that the gas tank could have exploded. It's like, oh yeah? I don't know. It's like Columbo is an expert at things that I kind of think are outside of his realm of reality to be an expert at. Because I'm not even sure there are experts at that. And I'm not sure they would go out of their way to bring an explosives expert in to check out at a car that had flipped over in the mountains of California somewhere. We're really dogging this episode. I feel real bad for dogging this episode, but this is a really kind of strangely limp episode. It just is limp. You know what I mean? It's just very milquetoast. There's not a lot going on other than Roddy McDowall just kind of acting like he's 30 years younger than he really is, or 20 years younger than he really is at the time, which is entertaining, mind you.
Well, even the thing with the photograph, we're talking about how he did this whole superimposition kind of thing. It's like, where's Columbo doing the exact same thing and being like, oh, I thought that was kind of a neat thing. My wife was watching TV last night and they had this one guy playing twins. And I wondered how on earth they could do that. And then I asked this guy who, works in this photography shop, and he was talking about how you can put something black over this part and expose this part of film, and then put something black over the other part and wind it back and expose it again, and it makes it look like two things, or something like that, or like some sort of, he's in the dark room. I want to see him like messing around with the development stuff and just like, oh, look, here's a picture of me and I don't know, President Nixon or something, and just like kind of do some stuff. Like we're going to get like, I can't remember which season it is, but we're going to get a photography episode, and there's going to be some really cool stuff in there that they should have done in this episode, and they didn't do it.
Well, and that is the other thing about this episode that is strange. Roddy McDowall's character is such a jack of all trades that it's like, why just pick one thing? Why does this chemist have a dark room connected to his office? A chemist. Why does a chemist have a dark room? Why is his character a photographer? It outside of the superimposing thing, which adds nothing to the episode, like you've mentioned now, it doesn't serve the plot. It's such a... He should have just been a chemist. This should have been this whole chemistry thing, and Columbo maybe should have... I don't know. Maybe he poisons him with gas or something, and they think it's like the cars, carbon monoxide killed him, but it was actually like gas in the cigar box. And so at the end, instead of it being a bomb, he like opens it and you think that there's gas pouring out. And yeah, like you could have done something like that. Lean into the chemistry part of it.
Right. You get those two chemicals that are totally inert by themselves, but when they mix together, then they do this. And you know what? Mrs. Columbo last night, she was cleaning my socks and she had this bleach there, and then she accidentally put them down and some ammonia got on it and created this noxic, chlorine gas. Well, that makes sense. This one is totally inert and this one's inert, but when they mix together, then it becomes dangerous, and maybe they fell into a fit of coughing and drove off the side of the road or something. I don't know. Something
more than this, yeah. Like I said, I feel bad for ragging on this episode, but at the same time, the best parts of this episode are James Gregory and Roddy McDowall interacting. That scene, I do like the scene. That's the other scene where this episode kind of verges on being an actual Columbo episode, when they're listening to that playback of the tape. That is kind of the scene where I'm like, this is verging on what I'm expecting from Columbo, where he's, Roddy McDowall keeps checking his watch, and it's like, awesome. Like, this is exactly what I'm wanting from the show. You have Columbo asking him, like, why did you keep checking your watch? And he says, people check their watches all the time, which is like perfect. That's a perfect answer for a smarmy dickhead character. And then from that scene, that initial scene, Nothing from then on out. It spins its wheels for another 45 minutes, essentially.
Sir, we've been in this meeting for an hour now and you haven't checked your watch once. It's something like that.
I guess there had to be one dud this first season. Just law of averages would denote that there's got to be one episode that's worse than the rest of them. But this one is worse than the other episode I wasn't a huge fan of, which I guess would be Dead Weight?
I think I could watch this easier than I could watch Dead Weight.
Really?
Really, because I like the performances in this, and it doesn't have that whole let's doubt Suzanne Plachette kind of stuff where she's just an idiot and then starts falling in love with Eddie Albert. I was like, no, that doesn't jive with me at all.
Yeah, but not much of this episode jived with me, though. That's the problem. It's just a bad episode. Like, it's just a poorly constructed episode, frankly, as a whole. Like, it's just not very well put together, not very well thought out. The twist, I mean, like anything else, these mystery stories or these mystery novels, if you go and read novels or watch these shows, are essentially untangling a knot. And sometimes the knot is interesting and exciting, and sometimes it's very, left over, right and under, right over, left and under, and just back it up and do that, and you've got the knot undone. This is a rather just kind of meh.
Yeah. It's a real shame, too, because, like I mentioned, Abrams was an editor. He had edited Ransom for a Dead Man, Death Lends a Hand, Lady in Waiting as well, the episode prior to this, and he's going to edit Rest in Peace, Mrs. Columbo in 1990. And then I think he directs one more episode of Columbo. I want to say it's the possibly the chess episode next season, but also directed an episode of Mrs. Columbo, so we'll get there eventually.
Oh my.
Yeah. The most dangerous
Less
match.
said about that, the better.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
The less said about Mrs. Columbo, the show, the better. Mrs. Columbo, the totally non-existent character, not so much. I have to ask now that we're almost to the end of this first season. Is Mrs. Columbo, in the fans' opinion, a real character?
I think she is a real character. Some of the people that we've interviewed for this show so far have been like, oh yeah, she's real. But then some are like, no, she's a figment of his imagination. Like, when we talk with David Martin Jones, he's just like, well, yeah, he's working all the time. He comes in from nowhere, goes back to nowhere, falls asleep, Ross Martin's study, like all of these things where he has no life. So he probably doesn't have a wife either. But then other people, like, I think DeWidziak's like, oh yeah, of course there's a Mrs. Columbo. Of course she's got to be real. So what you going to do? It's still up for debate.
I have done that too, as I'm sure we all have, where it's like, oh yeah, I know somebody who knows somebody. And it's like, I've said that once or twice in my life, but like Columbo uses it to supreme effect, if that's the case, for making it up. Because again, I don't think it matters either way, but I think for me, the more interesting character is he doesn't have a wife. And he's just so talented at essentially improv that he can figure out how to bend a conversation in the direction that he wants and get the empathy and sympathy of someone by, essentially pandering to, pandering to their humanity by bringing up his wife, making him seem more of a human and less of a police officer.
And less of a walking, talking, thinking machine that he actually is.
Right. And what's funny is, so I've been watching Amazon's Bosch, which is a police show, police procedural, in the same vein as Columbo in a lot of ways. And he's a very similar character. He is known as like a workaholic. He doesn't have a home life. When he's at home, when they show him at his house, he's sitting and going over cases while listening to jazz music. He's like, in a lot of ways, like a modern day Columbo character in the show, at least, because like he has no life. He's super cop, right? I think that's an interesting character archetype to mine because, again, it would have. I think if they remade Columbo now, he would not have a family or anybody, and it would probably be in his head, and that would be like an interesting direction to go. But they've done that before too. So I think it's more interesting for it to be ambiguous, but yeah, I mean, he always brings his family up as kind of a way to start humanizing himself in a conversation. So I'm just curious what the fans think, because I'm sure the fans all have very strong opinions. So
yeah, and I'm sure if you went to one of 20 Columbo groups that are out there, they're probably still talking about it today.
What other questions are there to ask about this show? Like a lot of shows from that era, there's a lot. Most of this is cut and dried. They're not, this ain't the fucking Sopranos where they're leaving, up for interpretation at the end. This is a pretty straightforward narrative show. So
don't forget the end episode of Columbo ends with him in a restaurant. It goes back to Bert's and there's the journey on the radio and it just cuts to black and that's it.
I didn't know. And is he eating onion rings?
Well, with chili.
Oh, with that like really terribly chopped lettuce that Timothy Carey does not chop. It's like the third time I brought Timothy Carey up on my own show recently because Heather brought him up, and I cannot get over him chopping that lettuce. That was like forever seared in my mind. Timothy Carey chopping the lettuce on Columbo like a monster with a giant hatchet. I guess it's like a kitchen. It's like a kitchen cleaver. Yeah, chopping lettuce with a cleaver. Hey, whatever.
Yeah, his knife techniques definitely aren't going to earn him a spot on Top Chef.
He was a Nam, so there you go.
So on the next episode, we are going to be talking about the directorial, I don't think it's the directorial debut, but definitely for Columbo it is. It could be directorial debut. I'm going to have to look into that. The episode Blueprint for Murder, directed by Peter Falk, Story by William Kelly, teleplay by Stephen Bochco. We're going to have Patrick O'Neill in there, who I'm not sure if you're going to recognize him from anything. And then Forrest Tucker, who I mostly grew up with him being in F Troop and many other things. But here he gets to play a very different character than he was on F Troop.
I know Patrick O'Neill from Under Siege. And I know Forrest Tucker from friend of the show, Richard Haddam, telling a story about how Milton Berle and Forrest Tucker compared the size of their cocks, and Jackie Gleason told Milton Berle to take just enough out to win. So, yikes. But I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what Peter Falk brings to the show, because everybody's kind of brought something different. We didn't mention the jazz section of this episode.
Yeah.
So kind of an interesting little, everybody kind of does their own thing with Columbo. And that was the thing in this episode. There was I guess when the James Gregory character is dying or in the process of being killed by the cigar box, there is a jazz interlude, and it's kind of interesting. Doesn't do much, kind of comes out of nowhere.
I kind of like that as well. That was nice that we don't hear what they're saying. We don't really need to.
No.
Yeah. And this was
it's stylistically interesting.
Yeah. This was the third of 4 episodes that Gil Millet, I can't remember how you say his name, but we've talked about him a lot in the past. He also does a ton of night gallery work, and he was the man who gave us most of the music for Kolchak the Night Stalker. So he's...
it sounded like it.
Yeah, I think even... Yeah, because when we watched the Quester tapes, and that had a lot of Kolchak themes in the Quester tapes.
Oh my God, the Quester tapes. That feels like a lifetime ago, Mike.
Oh God, yeah.
God, when was that? 2016?
It's a long time ago.
2016, 2017. My God, now we're all the way to Columbo. But he's still here with his music. And James Gregory is there. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
So, Chris, what is happening at the Culture Cast?
Talking about Rutger Hauer. So we're going to be watching some lesser-known Rutger Hauer movies. I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but one of them is The Hitcher, which I have not seen, which I'm looking forward. I haven't seen the original. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Speaking of French fries.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. But yeah, so that's what we're talking about over at the Culture Cast. And what about you, Mike? What's going on over at the projection booth?
Oh, we got a real grab bag month going on. We're talking about Black Lizard, the 62 and 68 version, The Conformist, The Night Porter. Probably a couple things that don't start with the, and definitely one that doesn't is Gumball Rally, where we're going to have you and Father Malone on there, and we're going to be talking about that, and Cannonball Run. I'm not going to make you watch all of the Cannonball Run films, which is, I think there's only actually 2, and the second one's pretty good. Some people say that Speed Trap is Cannonball Run 3, which is weird, but we could get lost in this whole coast to coast race kind of thing, because I've done it before. And my friend Frankenstein, a close personal friend of mine, told me that Death Race 2000 is the best coast to coast race movie that there is.
I've seen none of these movies. None of these films you just mentioned have I ever seen. So it's fitting that we're going to be on there with Father Malone, because I've never seen those movies.
I wonder if he's ever seen them.
The verdict's still out.
So definitely be sure to come back next month when we talk about Blueprint for Murder. Go on back and listen to and re-listen to the episodes that we have put out so far. Every month we're going to be coming back with a discussion about Columbo. Hopefully we'll get some more interviews coming up in the future here. Be sure to like us and subscribe on iTunes, any of your favorite podcast platforms, because that's what people say at the end of podcasts.
Smash that like button, baby.
Are you a film fan who loves the ultimate home video experience? Look no further than The Disconnected. Your host, Ryan Verrill, is your go-to source for the latest and most accurate information on home video releases, exclusive interviews with industry insiders and filmmakers, and has established a thriving community where every film and physical media enthusiast feels welcome. From hidden gems to blockbuster hits, The Disconnected brings you insider knowledge and a welcoming space to share your love of cinema. Watch every Thursday night at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific for the live announcements show and follow The Disconnected on social media to stay updated. Subscribe to The Disconnected on YouTube or on the podcast provider of your choice and dive into a world where every movie night is an adventure.
Have you ever wanted to dive deeper into the horror movies you love? Beyond the Blood is a horror podcast for fans who want more than just surface-level screams. We do deep dives into the movies that shaped us, digging into director commentaries, behind-the-scenes stories, deleted scenes, and the special features that most people skip. Each episode is a love letter to the genre. We break down how these films were made, the creative risks that paid off or didn't, and the lasting impact they've had on the genre as a whole. From 70s slashers to modern nightmares, we celebrate the craft, chaos, and characters that keep us coming back. If you're the kind of fan who rewatches movies with the commentary on, or you simply grew up in the video store horror aisle, the Beyond the Blood podcast was made for you. New episodes every single week. Subscribe, and let's dig deep. Welcome to the Beyond the Blood podcast.